Well, good morning or good afternoon. Thank you for attending our webinar today on modernizing healthcare and smart technology solutions. My name is Tony DeSantis. I am a shareholder in charge of our analytics and reporting service offering here at Lutz. Also on our AI leadership team and involved in a number of the firm's initiatives on digital transformation and updating our technology and use of technology. So excited to be here today and talk through how this may be relevant to your organizations.
I'm Paul Baumert. I'm the partner in charge of our healthcare consulting group. And I primarily work with rural hospitals across the country in either a CFO, revenue cycle capacity, and get involved in reimbursement issues and financial decisions for those organizations.
So we'll spend the next 45, 50 minutes walking through a number of areas. The goal today really is to try and demystify a little bit of the technology piece of this, as well as equip you with strategies and thoughts on how to approach this within your organization. We'll talk through some of just the core challenges, both I think within healthcare facilities, as well as some of them are really universal. And as I go across industries, seeing a lot of the same patterns of behavior. Talk through how we identify those opportunities within your organizations, get a little bit more technical and talk through what do we mean and how to boil down the AI automation and analytic conversations that you're having. And then ultimately leave you with some strategies and action items that you can take for your organization. If there's questions that come up as we're talking, feel free to drop those in the chat. We may look at answering those as we go, or certainly at the end, try and leave enough time to go through those. For anybody that's looking for CPE, there will be a polling question towards the end that will come up. You'll need to answer that and then be able to reach out to our team to get a certificate if needed. So with that, let's dive in. Why are we even here today? And this is a conversation, again, we're having cross-industry with our clients and prospective clients. Every business really is becoming a technology business. What that means for each organization will change and be nuanced based on how you're operating and what you're looking at. But at the end of the day, and probably no surprise to many of you, especially with the boom of AI and ChatGPT, advances in software, the tools, the technology that are out there just keep accelerating. And as organizations, we need to be looking at, are we doing things as efficiently, as effectively as possible? And so can we use new technology, or quite frankly, even the existing technology to our advantage to be competitive and really look at what is now becoming table stakes in order to maintain relevance? And then are there opportunities to get that competitive advantage? Again, with AI, its ability to help use other pieces of technology are fast tracking, automation, analytics, even as simple as your use of Excel can be accelerated by some of the tools that are coming out from a technology perspective. So, businesses, organizations really need to start thinking about, if they aren't already, how do we adopt these? How do we leverage them? And how do we make it work within our organization ultimately? We talk a little bit more specifically about the healthcare space. Paul, maybe kind of talk through what are the common pain points, challenges that you're seeing within healthcare?
Well, coming from a financial perspective, but also from a revenue cycle perspective, is there anything from the CFO down to the staff accountant that we can automate that would save time in our monthly workflow? Are the financial statements automated within the system? Are the board packets or the statistics that you're gathering on a monthly basis is that coming from the system? And the approach that I typically take with our clients is, can your current system provide that information? Do we have to build a new report? Do we need to get assistance from that software vendor to help us build something that's more automated, that we don't have to go through a manual process? So there's other things like the information to file the annual cost report. Am I gathering that somewhat manually and different people across the organization, or is it something I can automate within the systems? A lot of times with the advancements of the EMRs that we have now, there's been a lot of facilities, hospitals that have upgraded their technology. So those that ability to maybe automate things are there. I know it takes time and effort, but in the long run, I certainly think it saves you time, and it allows you, especially as a CFO, to focus on, instead of gathering data and reporting, spend time in other areas to identify potential problems, potential solutions for your organization, and free up your time in those manual tasks to automate it. The other thing is within the revenue cycle. There's a lot of pain points in the different payers, Medicare Advantage for one. Are we looking at, are we getting paid correctly within our contract? Is there reports that we can run to identify that? Is there outside data within that we can gather within the systems that we have, that we can analyze it, whether through Excel or other database solutions out there that we can do to help us identify if we're getting paid right, if there's denials, why, maybe catching some of those things earlier by using technology would be helpful as well. Is there quality measures that we're tracking that we're having to do manually? Can we use our system to do that? Are there surveys that we can do to use technology? And the main thing is sometimes we dig into the details manually, and we're not getting all the data, or we're not analyzing the data correctly, or the data is wrong that we're looking at. So, making sure the data is correct before we analyze is a big portion of this too.
Yeah, and the general themes around this, and there's very specific examples within the healthcare space and rev cycles, but we're again seeing it across industry, right? Where is workflow inefficient? There's resource constraints, staffing constraints. How do we do more with less? That concept out there, right? What's affecting your patient experience and staff experience? Taking the time to have to go enter information into the system versus serving patients. Are there opportunities there? Are some of our systems outdated, right? Siloed being a big piece, and we see a lot of times as I get involved in starting conversations, particularly around analytics, is I can't get data to talk to each other, right? It lives in its system, but I need my EMR and my accounting system to work together, my operational data and payroll data, so I can have a holistic view of the world. I'm manually downloading things into Excel and trying to combine them. So I'm taking the time to create the analysis rather than actually analyzing the output. And so all of this is looking towards that goal of how do you free up your time? I talk about it in terms of that the mental capacity. We all only have so much that we can be doing, and a lot of us are wearing multiple hats. So if we can use some of this technology to free up that space, regain it, and utilize it, that's the key.
Yeah, and to add to what Tony said, I think a lot of the times it's that there's maybe a better solution out there, but you don't know where to start. And as a CFO, I would start with what's taking me the most time, and what am I doing manually, or what is my staff doing manually that we could potentially automate. And instead of creating a workbook and doing it every month, maybe we could create something that we can download the data and it populates what we need on a monthly basis, so we only have to do it once and build it. Some of the monthly estimates that hospitals will do as far as like accounts receivable, contractual estimates. Is there a way we can automate that? We've worked with our clients to do that. Is there a way that your systems allow you to create the information you need by downloading the AR file, for example, the ATB, that creates the aging and the contractual allowances that you need on a more automated basis, so you don't have to manually type things in, or your staff doesn't have to manually type things in. So that's kind of where I would start. And in just a specific role within the financial part of the hospital is what is really taking you a lot of time manually, and is there a way to automate it then and work with your IT staff or other consultants to be able to identify how you can do it more efficiently.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that, those concepts in kind of the strategy and reinforce that a little bit as we go on. But great points to think about as you're going through your list of, how can we do this better, or where can I save time? In terms of identifying those opportunities, right, that make sense for your organization, wanted to talk a little bit about the just digital transformation and coming from a Big Four background myself and spending 20 years in the consulting world. I actually cringe a little bit at the terminology digital transformation. I think with the technology in general, the buzzwords get thrown out there and can sound intimidating and overwhelming. And really, at the end of the day, what we're talking about is how can we use technology to our advantage, right? Let's rethink certain processes, certain workflows where we can use the technology that's out there now to our benefit. And a lot of pitfalls I see and saw this real specifically with AI and ChatGPT is we start wanting to lead with the technology, right? How do I have AI solve my problems? Or our strategic initiative becomes, we're going to use more AI this year, rather than looking at it from what are the business issues, the business challenges, the opportunities that we're looking to solve, and then figuring out which technology works for it. So even internally here at Lutz with ChatGPT and all that coming out, had folks coming and asking, hey, can we solve this problem with AI? And a lot of times my answer was no, but we've got other technology that we've had for years that we can actually use to do that. And so while sometimes it's tiresome and we don't want to talk about AI or technology, what it has encouraged is folks to start thinking about their processes. And while they're looking at it as AI is the hammer and every problem's a nail, it is at least getting folks to think about, okay, maybe there are technology solutions to some of our current problems. And so don't get lost in the words of digital transformation and really think about it in terms of how can we automate, get more effective, use technology to our advantage, whether it's new or existing technology you already have in-house, to ultimately reduce cost, improve the quality of life for your staff, your patients, and potentially generate revenue and opportunities. Paul talked a little bit about this already in terms of how do we start to identify those opportunities, and we've kind of seeded this throughout because really this ultimately becomes the takeaways that we'd like to leave you with is not to go back to your organization and say, hey, I've got a solution for this problem, but I've got a way to evaluate which opportunities, which problems make the most sense for us to start tackling. And so, again, we've done this internally at Lutz. We do this with clients, but you yourself can look at it and say, how do we start to break down our current processes? Probably departmentally and then within there. Right, Paul mentioned the revenue recognition cycle and compliance reporting and other areas. As you think about it, getting down to that level, how do we go about doing that? Where are the bottlenecks in that process? What's really manual or time consuming? Or if you talk to your staff or team that's doing it, what are their pain points? We did an internal presentation and made a poll question that basically said, what do you hate about your job? It's black and white about that. What that allowed was from ideas of, okay, we can see where there's an opportunity to maybe apply technology. Obviously, you've got to be careful in the context, but figuring out from your team, they're great indicators of where there are opportunities to streamline our process. The other piece of it is then involving the right stakeholders. What would they change about their job? Why would they change it? What are their thoughts? How could it maybe be better? And get out of the rut of this is the way we've always done it and challenge some of those things. I'd also encourage the team and give them the empowerment that if they're thinking there's got to be a better way, that's an opportunity to bring something to us to talk about and figure out what does or doesn't make sense. Got on here, figuring out ROI in a couple of slides. We'll give you a little bit more of a framework from there, but that's everybody's focus, right? There's a limited amount of time. There's a limited amount of cost or money there to throw towards problems. How do we decide what makes the most sense for our organization within all the constraints we're looking at? And then ultimately assessing the organizational's readiness to adopt either new technology, use your existing technology more effectively, and manage the change, right? Change management is always a part of this, but again, not getting lost in the technology piece first, figuring out where within the organization those things make sense. So we can't have this conversation and completely ignore the technology side, but what we wanted to do was talk about the language that's out there, the terms that maybe you're hearing, and again, demystify a little bit, try and make them a little bit more accessible so that you at least feel comfortable having the conversation as a starting point. And really the three key areas as we talk to our client base is analytics, automation, and AI. Probably nobody will argue AI is winning at the moment, that it is front and center in all that it's doing and can do, and the marketing teams are having a field day with promoting all of the AI features that their software have or will have. A lot of times it's just rebranding of things they were already doing. So there were automation and workflow pieces that already existed, or some sort of reporting and analytics that they're now enhancing. I don't want to completely belittle it either, though. What it is creating access to and the speed at which folks can do things, automation, analytics, even Power Excel users now having AI at their fingertips to help enhance what they can do is a game changer for folks. And thinking about it in that terms of not necessarily, I need to have this AI agent or large language model, which may be a term you're hearing, and be able to utilize that. But how can I use a chat GPT and ask it questions about an Excel formula or how to use Excel better? That being a benefit to the organization and not overlooking some of those, quote unquote, simple use cases is key. Diving a little bit more into each one of those topics. So analytics, in its simplest terms, is about using historical information to make decisions both now and hopefully for future and predictions. There's a process that needs to go through. We need to collect data, right? And understand, are we collecting the right information? Do we have everything we need? And what are we looking for? Sometimes we want to transform or enrich it, right? Our system captures some of the information, but maybe we want to categorize procedures or codes in a different way than our current system allows to do. can we do that down the line, whether that's in Excel or a tool like Power BI and Tableau? Somebody wants to explore that data and understand what's it telling us, what's it look like. And then as we think about presenting it, can we visualize it, make it a little bit more easy to consume for those that aren't wired to look at rows and columns of information? And then ultimate goal is to be able to have some sort of analysis. That may be you as a CFO or an ops person looking at the output and making some assessments and conclusions on it. The ultimate goal is for those that maybe aren't as informed or have as much background in the organization, that those tools can actually present them findings and action items. But ultimately, a lot of us are probably already doing this driven through Excel. And as Paul talked about, really using and leveraging that. From a visualization standpoint, Power BI, Tableau, there's other tools out there, are facilitating the ease of starting to create more of those charts and graphs. But again, it's not about the next tool, it's figuring out what you need. And if Excel serves its purpose, how do you leverage and get more out of it, right? There's features within Excel right now called Power Query where you can connect to that data, have it automatically refresh, go through transformation steps so that that end user can explore. Obviously, you can make charts and graphs in Excel as well. So this isn't necessarily looking for the next tool to do this better, but thinking about the tools you have in place. The automation side, again, this is a term that gets thrown out there. A lot of times when it's used, it's kind of just, we're looking for automation. You may hear RPA or robotic process automation, bots for short. Those are really tools and programs that allow you to essentially record steps and then have the computer do those over and over again. For those that are Power Excel users, think of it as a macro function that you may have gone in and recorded your keystrokes. It creates code, and then you can run that over and over again. That's what the automation tools are that are out there. But really, it's thinking about where within our organization do we have repeatable manual processes, right? Does somebody need to keep logging into a different program and downloading files, or hand key information from a spreadsheet into a system or one spreadsheet to another, and looking at how do we automate that process so that those repetitive tasks can be done. I think about, and going back to my comment of, there's got to be a better way. Years ago, a colleague came to me because I had said that previously and said, listen, I don't know if there's anything we can do, but we're going to go through this Excel exercise. It's going to take a team of 8 to 10 people all weekend to go through it. Could you take a look? And spending an hour, I was able to essentially write an Excel macro that automated the entire process. It allowed one person to periodically check and make sure it was still running, but took a weekend's worth of work off of the plate of 8 to 10 people. So there wasn't anything highly sophisticated. I just had the skill set and had at least planted the seed of there's got to be a better way. And so looking for those opportunities, again, how do we automate manual, repetitive processes and look at it? A couple of other things to think about here. Don't automate bad process. So if you go and somebody's asking you to automate and you evaluate and say, yeah, there's an opportunity, take it to look at the process itself. And a lot of times the steps we're taking were because we had to take them whenever we started the process, but we've never reevaluated and looked at it and go, you know what, I can get from A to B a lot quicker now. So I don't need to automate these things that are happening in between. I can actually reduce that down and do it in fewer steps. So take the opportunity to evaluate and figure out what makes sense. The other is understand you don't have to automate end to end, right? Identify areas that you can automate. You still may have manual intervention or other steps that need to be taken, but what can you take off of the team's plate?
And just kind of add to that, an example, it's not using an Excel, it's using your current, let's say your GL software, where board members may ask it, it'd sure be nice to get a cash flow statement on a monthly basis. The way we used to do it is we would download the financial statements into Excel and we'd have to calculate it monthly. Well, the GL programs right now, on the accounting software side, you can build a cash flow statement on a monthly, build a cash flow statement, and that repopulates every month and gives you the monthly cash flows and the year-to-date cash flows. And there's some time to build it, but it's not going to take you any longer than if you build an Excel file and then it's done and you don't have to go back to your normal process. And a lot of times you might not be doing a cash flow statement. That could be an enhanced financial reporting measure that you could give to the board or to management. That's just one example of, hey, you've got the technology already within your system. If you spend the time to build it, then that just cuts that time off of your plate and it's automatically produced. That's just one example of how you can use technology that you already have to build something, either enhance what you currently have and save you time, or build something new that you're able to use going forward with little additional work.
Yeah, absolutely. And automation's a good one where it covers a lot of different areas, right? We have folks that come and say, hey, we need to automate this process, but it's doing a bunch of steps for the goal of reporting. Well, there's ways to automate that, but it's not traditional RPA or robotic process automation. So again, looking at those systems, what already exists, to Paul's point, is critical as we start to look through those. And then the last one, AI, artificial intelligence. We've obviously done webinars that this can take a whole hour to get through and understand. I think the key things are, it is really using systems and machines that can mimic human behavior. A lot of it has existed historically. What you're seeing now in ChatGPT, Claude, choose your new word and new item that's popping out is the term large language model. At the end of the day, it's a word prediction engine. It has learned based on reading, in simplistic terms, the internet, and now knows the most likely scenario of this word typically follows this pattern or this phrase. So it gives the impression of being intelligent, but really what it's doing is creating content. It is starting to gain knowledge, and there's an evolution that's coming. But content generation, summarization, so using it for that. I mentioned things like looking up how do I do this in Excel being really beneficial. I know our team, from a coding perspective, even with their background and expertise, is using that to be more effective, more efficient. Using it for brainstorming. I've got a thought. I'm trying to figure out our strategy for digital transformation. What are your thoughts there? Using those tools to help brainstorm, bounce ideas off, and summarize information can be really beneficial. Ultimately, it's trying to learn, help you plan, and start to create an environment where it can get its arms around your data faster, quicker, and give you insight based on prompting that you're doing. Again, understanding what you're trying to solve and then going and look will lead you to, is it an AI solution I need, or something else in the technology stack we already have, or that is much more attainable, available, and needed. We wanted to leave just kind of some thoughts on more the AI side of it as technology to start with. One thing that we left off here, but we've obviously talked about, again, Excel. Don't overlook it, right? There is plenty of use case for Excel, especially if you're just starting that journey. It's going to be accessible. It's going to be something that your team's used to seeing, utilizing, and may increase the adoption and your ability to start using it. If you're in Microsoft already, Microsoft Teams, using that for internal meetings and conversations and the ability to record and transcribe those meetings has been hugely impactful for our organization. It allows for quicker, summarization and note taking. You can focus on the meeting itself. And then there are features that with increased licensing, you can leverage something called intelligent recap, where it will literally spit out a summary of that meeting, highlight takeaways and to-dos, and can be a huge time saver. There are some standalone applications that you can add into if you're using Zoom or some other web conferencing technology. But looking at things like that, where it's just saving folks on the team time and energy, can be immensely valuable. Microsoft has come out with their Copilot solution, which is leveraging ChatGPT and some of those features and functions. There are some free versions that you can go out and use for more of that internet search and hey, find me how to write this Excel file or Excel macro or code and get step-by-step instructions. There's options out in Google as well. Copilot then has a paid version that actually looks at the entire landscape of your emails and Teams messages. And if you're using SharePoint, a really fast way to retrieve information. I start my days with going to Copilot and saying, what are my to-dos for the day? What emails have I not looked at or responded to? And it gives me a summary of that information that I can immediately act on. Paul's mentioned it several times, right? What existing software features do you have that maybe you're not using, right? That either they've upgraded and enhanced and it just hasn't fit into your flow, or you haven't looked and explored lately, right? We get into that mindset of it's working, it's the way we've always done it, and so we don't ask that next question. As you start to evaluate those processes, are there opportunities there?
Yeah, and I would say take advantage of, training that they offer for free. A lot of times I'm the same. It's like, I don't know, spend the hour listening to someone tell me how to use the software. However, you may be able to give them questions ahead of time to say, we're trying to solve this, or we'd like to do this type of reporting, or whatever it may be. Use those resources. A lot of times it's built into your contract. You're not going to pay extra for it. There's also, there could be, yes, we can do that, but we're going to have to build it for you. You're going to have to do it yourself. Well, then there's the return on investment discussion. Do I have someone do it internally, or do I pay somebody else within the software organization to build it for me? And then it saves me X amount of time down the road. So take advantage of, the new features. Make sure someone on your team is identifying those. Ask the questions. Can our current systems do this for us? Is there something different that we need to do as far as building a report or utilizing part of the software that we haven't been utilized? Is there a dashboard that we can create that we can potentially build or enhance of what we currently have? And then I know I talked about automate and your manual reporting, but this is kind of where I would start as a CFO in that role, the finance department. If you're in health information management, am I manually gathering stats on a monthly basis or a yearly basis? Am I gathering information for our annual Medicare cost report that I could get information out of our system? If I have to build a report or build a dashboard to get that information, and then it's done going forward, and the manual process is taken out of it. So those are kind of some easy things to think about. Financial reporting, monthly estimates like accounts receivable that I mentioned. Is there a way to automate that? And maybe there's a way to get that information or those estimates better by using your current system. So just, my suggestion there is talk to your staff, kind of look at what your processes are on a monthly basis and identify potential ways that technology can improve, but also save you some time.
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of times, our team gets involved in conversations that are, hey, we're going to change this tool because we need something different. And as we start to explore and understand what they're not getting, it is a matter of, you don't need to replace the whole system. You may need something that just bridges the gap. Or to Paul's point, they weren't aware of new features or other things that have come out that have been available. So if you're in those discussions of we need to upgrade our systems, it is an opportunity to think about and look at and go, okay, why are we doing that? Back to the process and review, and then figuring out, again, is it an upgrade that we need, or maybe it's just a really specific solution for that particular area of pain that we're looking at. At this point, for those that need CPE credit, we're going to put a polling question up here. It's very difficult, so requires that you paid attention. But kind of quick answer on that, and then again, if you need a certificate, you can reach out to our team. The email address is on screen to get that.
That, if you're definitely, most of the organizations that we work with on the hospitals have, information technology or IT department. Suggestion may be create a committee within this, the finance, clinical, the IT, to start talking about potential solutions that the information technology automation can help you with, to try to, from a strategic plan of what are some goals for the organization in this area that we can focus on over the next year to get started, and bring those people in within your organization that can help you achieve those goals. So that's a way to kind of get it out on the forefront and identify some opportunities within the organization and make some progress.
So, and that leads perfectly into kind of the strategies for implementation. Just a quick note on the technology side of things. Certainly security comes up and tends to be everybody's first reaction and question. They do need to be looked at, especially around the AI solutions. It's getting better. It's certainly a focus as we've been at Microsoft conferences. They understand that and the concerns, and having some strategies on how to prepare your organization internally. A lot of the security concerns are because organizations themselves haven't set up the permissions and the structure and a lot of those things from the start. So there is some work there, but certainly if you're looking at one-off AI tools, vetting those and understanding what they're using, where that information is going is important, obviously within the healthcare space, front and center. But in terms of the strategy and how do we look at this, right? At the end of the day, if you try and do all of this at once, it's overwhelming, right? And so really trying to figure out where is the value and impact versus the complexity, as well as the constraints with the organization, right? What are your strategic goals? What are you looking to do? And again, going back to have the goals focus on the business side of things, not a technology, right? we're going to use more AI, or we're going to build a data warehouse as our strategic goal. Well, my first question becomes, for what? Why? Right? And so really thinking about those goals in terms of the business, what you're trying to drive, and then within those goals, how does technology play a role and allow you to get there faster? Those goals might be completely unrelated, right? We want to drive more patient satisfaction. As you start to break down what it takes to do that, you may find that there are areas, nurses, providers aren't able to spend enough time, with the patients because they are entering information or worried about all the information they have to get in, so they're trying to rush out of things. So thinking through and aligning and understanding. Also looking at how scalable and feasible is it, right? It'd be great if we could do that, but the reality is that that's not on our roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years. And so we need to reassess. But also, are we solving a problem that is repeated, right? Paul talked about that report that you're generating. You're doing it every month. It's always going to be a need. Automating that and taking the time now makes sense versus one individual who does this maybe once a year. Is it worth spending the time and looking at it? So, again, how scalable is it? Can we leverage it in other places? And does it have long-term benefit to working through it? Anything else, Paul, in your perspective? Yeah, kind of a simple way to think of it is a little bit of this prioritization metrics. Obviously, there's more things that just go into it than complexity and value and impact. But this helps you as you're starting to create that list of opportunities and where to attack, right? If it's high value, low complexity, should be a no-brainer, kind of the start small, get some quick wins. That would be that bucket, right? Of how do we get some adoption, get people used to it? It's going to have a lot of value and it's really low complexity. We want to be on that and start moving it. I know that's a lot of times as we're attacking even just the reporting problems for clients. It's the low hanging fruit we talk about. You get people used to what you're doing, get comfort level, they get some trust in the process, and they can see value that enables the future conversations. In the same vein, if it is high complexity, low value, we probably shouldn't be spending any time on it. The trick then is the ones that fall in between, right? As I decrease value and increase complexity, we've got to evaluate, probably aligned with our strategic vision, our internal capabilities and readiness. Does it make sense now? Do we put it on a future path? And are there some dependencies that we need to change? But if you start to break down that list, as you put it together into these buckets, it makes some of the decisioning easier and it gives you a path to have a discussion, right? And you're probably going to spend a lot of time in that diagonal section, right, of evaluate as you start breaking them down. And you can even break the processes down further, right? I mentioned you don't have to automate end-to-end something. Well, if we look at a process and go, hey, there's high value, but high complexity, are there smaller components we can start breaking off and looking at and thinking through that process? So you can find high impact, lower complexity within a bigger process that you can work. Ultimately, to be effective in it, and we talked about some of these already, right, is start small, build the capabilities, the change management that's going to be needed as part of it. Make sure you're aligning technologies with the organization goals, right? It's not about going and finding the next technology or tool. It's understanding what we're solving for, Do we have capabilities and tools in-house already? And every conversation, every industry I talk to, nobody's jumping up and down to go get the next tool, right? It's we already have too many. How do we shrink that down? So again, what can we use that's already there, or get more strategic in what we're doing as we approach the technology component itself? Staff training is going to be critical in that change management, right? As we change things, who gets it and understands it, and how do you make them champions of change and what you're doing, and help bring those that may be less willing, less able, less wanting along the journey with you.
I also think of it as, that within each organization, there's certain people that have certain tasks that they're the only ones that know how to do it. And if they leave, you're in big trouble because someone else can't come behind them and reduplicate what they've just done because of all their institutional knowledge. Those are some opportunities, I think, that you could identify. Can we use technology to prepare the information that this one person only knows how to do, so we can automate it, so if they do leave, we have the resource available to do that job.
Absolutely. Yep. And just a quick reminder, if questions have come up, go ahead and submit them. We'll kind of be wrapping content here in the next couple of minutes, and address any of those that come up. All of this isn't to say you've got to figure it out internally, right? So if they aren't skill sets you already have, find a trusted vendor or an expert when needed to come help navigate it. Sometimes it's for that planning purpose, right? How to strategize, how to think about it, how to brainstorm and identify areas. You may have that down, but it's okay, what should we start with? Or we've identified what to start with, but have no idea how to make that come to reality. Use external resources when it makes sense for your organization, at the very least to accelerate your ability to do it. If it's somebody's 88th hat that they need to be wearing, the movement of that is obviously going to be slower, not focused. Again, Paul mentioned early on, thinking about a committee and champions, probably having one or two folks where their goals are tied to these initiatives and the outcomes, and looking at it. With that, it's important to be measuring what are those outcomes, right? Work we've done here, we're measuring how much time did it save, right? Understanding what the value proposition when you've gone through that ROI review, and then trying to measure and quantify that. Did it actually happen? Did we get better outcomes than we thought? Did we not quite get there, but there's still value in understanding that? And then the last piece on this, and kind of more of a technology approach, but failing fast, right? If you start small and try things that don't work, that's okay, right? If you try and go, we're going to redo all of this and have this end-to-end automation process, and everybody's life is going to be great, but we're going to go into in a dark cave for the next 18 months and come out of it, the likelihood of success in that scenario is pretty small. It's okay to fail. If you're doing it in small increments and figuring out what does and doesn't work for your organization, and then adjusting and making changes.
And I would say too, you've got your current vendors, maybe your EMR, going to those conferences, building relationships with them, but also other facilities that are using the software, and ask the questions of them, what they're doing. A lot of times you can get great ideas from other facilities that are already solving the problems you're thinking about. So that's a resource as well within the industry, that you can contact other hospitals, for example, that are using the software, and ask them those questions as well. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, see what other people are doing, and use that as a resource, maybe before you get started on a project, and see what else has been done out there already.
Yeah, absolutely. at the end of the day, there's some considerations as well, right? There's always resistance to change. I've said it several times. We've always done it this way. Um, you know, understanding that, knowing your culture, and again, figuring out how to get that adoption. What's going to work? Is it champions? Is it they just need to see it to believe it? Being able to measure that value and then show them are obviously ways to get through that. Budget, right? There's not an endless supply of money. So as you're doing your ROI calculations and figuring out, okay, where does it make sense? And if it's not now, start planning for it, right? Because as we said in the first slide, the technology's here, it's coming. In a lot of cases, it's table stakes to just stay competitive. So making sure there's a plan to look through that. If you do have those siloed systems, the integration between technologies can be a challenge, right? Are we on older technology? What's the best way to connect? Does what we need to do require us to upgrade and change? And understanding where those are, and those are going to be roadblocks that you have to work through. Again, just we didn't want this to be a selling new tools, so we've reiterated it a number of times. But what do you have in house that allow you to provide better care, better service, better work life for those individuals within your organization? So how do you wrap that all up with an action plan, right? If you haven't already, what is that internal assessment? Where are processes that have opportunity to look at and reevaluate? Who are the stakeholders that are going to be champions and drive and cheerleaders for the effort, getting them engaged and starting to understand and hearing from them? I will say, sometimes we see IT trying to drive these initiatives. And while their heart's in the right place, if it doesn't come from the business, it's really met with a lot of resistance. So who in the business is going to get behind this, drive it? They don't need to know the technical solutions. They need to be able to identify the business needs, what the outcomes should be, and then use the team that understands the technology to help deliver that. Once you've done that assessment, what are those pilot projects? How do we learn to work together? How do we learn to work with that external vendor? How do we start to use the technology and see how it can benefit us? And frame them as pilots, right? These are learning exercises. Put a time box around them, fail fast, learn quick, and be able to then plan out as you go forward. Importantly, track that progress, right? What are we doing? What are we learning? Measure those outcomes. And then how do we adjust and change and be comfortable going, the plan we started with isn't the plan we're finishing with, because we've learned along the way and we can adjust and regroup from there. So with that, take a quick look, see if there's any questions, and then we can wrap up. Okay. We're not seeing anything come in at this point. Paul, any closing thoughts as we wrap up?
Well, I think that the overall goal is to just start thinking about what ways technology can improve, your business as a healthcare organization, how it can improve the lives of your employees by making them more efficient and allowing them time for other things that make an impact on your organization. But it's something that you probably need to start thinking about and doing, because your competitors are going to be doing it. It's changing the way we work, and to embrace that maybe there's some things that we can do now, and 5 years from now, it's going to look a lot different. So the suggestion is just to get started, to start thinking about what you're doing and how you can use technology to improve your organization.
Yeah, and I would just add, along those lines on more the technology side, some organizations' inclination has been to try and get in and build and create their own things. What we're seeing and finding is, again, you've got software providers that are their day job is to improve their technology, improve their features, leverage these new things. So, certainly if you're in the early stages of this, looking at what you can leverage and not trying to build something net new on your own because it is changing so fast. It isn't your full-time area of expertise, and really leaning into what do you already have, what providers are already giving you that maybe you're not using, and then when you kind of reach the limits of that, exploring, tool-specific needs based on that priority list you identify. But as Paul said, you do need to be thinking about it now. But there's a lot of opportunity as you start to get that list and start moving on. So we appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for spending the last hour with us. Feel free to reach out if there's questions or other things that come out of this as you sit down and think about it a little bit more. With that, say goodbye. Have a great rest of your week.